Good afternoon. As we welcome you into our last campus update of the winter quarter 2021 here on March 19th. My name is Randy Gottfried, Director of Classroom Support Services. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're going to have a brief presentation through campus updates, budget updates, some other information for you, and then we'll go into question and answers. So I'd like to begin and turn it over to President Roberts.
As I was sharing, I was saying some complimentary words about you, Randy. You always do such a wonderful job of helping to facilitate and enter us into this conversation, and of course, closing us out at the end. So thank you so much for making it all come together. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that have to happen for us to be able to do these campus updates. And as you mentioned, it is our last update of this quarter, and it marks a milestone. We have now been in remote working for over a year. And I have to say, I am so grateful to all of you who, as I said last night, with unwavering focus, you've inspired and taught and served our students with incredible energy and dynamism, and most importantly, care. And I am so grateful for that. And we continue on. We'll hear some more things about what's happening with COVID, but most importantly, we want to make sure we're all taking care. This has been quite an experience and quite a challenge for all of us, both personally and of course at the college. I also want to do some recognition. We're doing some outstanding work and impressive work with our Guided Pathways project. We're also moving quickly and tirelessly through our CTC link work, and our teams are focused on modernizing the experience for our students. And that in itself is going to make just a huge difference for us as we turn this quarter of this year and move into 2022 and see the impact of all the hard work we're doing now and the excellent experience our students will have then. And then of course, we've been working in a thoughtful way on our day of learning. And I want to thank the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Learning Team and the Inclusive Excellence and Steering Committee who's come alongside the DEI team. They've done a wonderful job of curating. Thank you for those in the community who have come around this project and have submitted almost 20 proposals that will enrich our day of learning around this question: how do we foster inclusive change at Shoreline? And so we're very thankful for that. I'll give a little bit more later on, a little bit more detail about how we'll begin to ramp up and prepare through some pre-sessions. And then, of course, another big milestone, we had our faculty who have had a professional career milestone by being awarded and being conferred tenure last evening. And we'll have an opportunity to celebrate them a little bit later in this update. I want to say and turn our attention to what we're all facing, a lot of stress and of course strain, not just around the pandemic, but also the social and political uncertainty and unrest, particularly the senseless killings that we saw in Atlanta and the continued anti-Asian racism, discrimination, fear, and harm that is throughout our community. And just to be sensitive to not just our students, but also our employees and the communities that we serve. We want to make sure that we're committing to their safety and well-being. So I commend you to some bystanding training that we are offering here at the college, as well as just to reach out to those that you know and provide solidarity, as we have with the whole system of this state board, community and technical colleges. We've all come alongside this and this in denouncing this rise in anti-Asian really discrimination and terror that is going through not just the larger national scene, but also right here in our own district and in our own community. So just wanted to take a moment to note that this is happening, and it is also impacting so many of the people we care about and the students we serve here at Shoreline. I wanted to, Randy, if you could advance the slides. We are, as always, graced by our own Mary Burrows, who's our resident expert on COVID, and she's going to provide a really deep information and update about what's happening and some things that are going to be changing in our own state as we move to phase 3. Gavin Smith is going to also share some changes that we're doing on campus related to COVID. And then Veronica Zura is going to share some things. We're going to insert Philip King. He's going to share a few things about what this is going to look like in terms of our schedule during this next piece. Next slide, please. Before I get started and introduce Mary, I know it's very difficult to keep wrapping our minds around that we're in this active pandemic, but we are, and we're getting ready to move into finals week and then spring break. And I know we all want to get out and be with people, but we're at a very important time in helping us move through this pandemic to the other side. And I hope that we all stay safe, continue to mask, physically distance, and continue our hand sanitizing and all those protocols as we move into the end of this quarter, our spring break, and get prepared for spring quarter. So with that, Mary, I know you've got some important pieces of new facts about COVID you'd like to share.
Thanks, Dr. Roberts. As you all are very aware, King and Snohomish County have moved into phase 3. And basically the changes in phase 3 have to do with, I think the most exciting one for me was the ability to have professional sports with 25% attendance. And also indoor venues can increase the number of people that are within their indoor venues as well. The governor also increased the number of people who are eligible for vaccinations. It now includes anyone who is 16 years or older, who have a disability or a pre-existing condition that puts them at high risk for COVID. And then shortly thereafter, he announced that starting on the 31st, the vaccination has been brought down to age 60. So another 5-year group of people who are eligible for vaccination. Unfortunately, it means that we don't have more vaccine, we have the same amount of vaccine. It may get more difficult to get those vaccinations, but at least more people are eligible as we do have increase in numbers. The other major vaccination news on the horizon is the CDC guidelines for those who are immunized and the interactions that they may have. And those relate to being able to visit with people who are also vaccinated without masking, and being able to visit with people who are not vaccinated unless they are at high risk for COVID, in which case they recommend masking and social distancing in those situations. So a little bit more ability to socialize, but I agree with Dr. Roberts as far as cautioning that we're seeing new variants out there that have real potential for for reinfections and perhaps less effectiveness of the vaccine. But we're still in a positive movement, which is a good thing. Dr. Roberts, did you want me to talk about the campus access plan?
No, that will be
Okay.
Gavin Smith.
Anything else you want me to share?
No, I think you've done a great job.
Okay.
As always, Mary.
Happy to answer questions.
So Gavin, if you could share about the campus access plan, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. So another aspect of the recent changes is that the governor's guidelines no longer require us to do temperature checks for people coming onto campus. However, we still have the check-in or access form that people use coming onto campus, and that remains critical because if they're in the unlikely event of a case of COVID, we need the information from those access form check-ins to be able to do any contact tracing. So under the new rules, employees no longer need to stop at the pub or the automotive check-in, but they are still required to always complete the access form when coming onto campus. Also, as before, all staff are still required to request access from their supervisor and the appropriate ET member to come onto campus. Supervisors will now be emailed when employees check in with the access form, and that's so they can do their part in helping everyone remember to use it. And lastly, for students, students no longer need to get temperature checks, but they are still stopping at the automotive check-in station so they can get their sticker. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Ellen Goddess for taking on the challenging role of COVID supervisor. It's a lot of work. She's done it really well. And I want to say thank you to Jason Liebert for making the programming changes that supported the recent changes.
Next slide, please, Randy. So just a reminder, we do have our COVID information page on the internet, and all the information is archived there, as well as if you are having any emotional or mental, if you need any emotional or mental support, we do have those resources for our employees as well as, and it's listed there. So just for your, just as a reminder. And then I'm going to ask Vice President King to come on and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing through summer and moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. So a very quick update just about summer specifically, because that's the comment here. More in the slides later on about fall. Summer will still be predominantly remote. So that which we're planning for spring, students are registering today. If you listened to the board meeting yesterday, we had an enrollment update for spring. The spring will look exactly like winter did. Summer should look very similar. Asynchronous remote, you're going to have some of the hybrid lab options on campus, similar automotive, those programs at least run in the summer. There may be one or two programs that might pilot some offerings whereby we have some hybrid offerings on campus. Those are done by exception only. Again, work through your dean. I sent those notices through the deans to their units, but summer schedule is already planned. I believe it went out. It's been being updated. And in terms of instruction, I don't believe, as last summer, we had some pickup of spring. So for example, last summer, we did quite a bit of extra teaching in the dental hygiene program because we struggled with the quick move to remote in spring. We should not have that experience this summer, just in terms of having to pick up extra because we've now been in the mode for a while. So we should have a normal summer, whatever normal might mean in terms of the courses we offer. And again, work with your deans on that in terms of any changes or additions to that schedule. And again, remember for students, registration for summer quarter begins in the second week of May, similar to fall. And then in terms of services and general operations of the campus, as we've conveyed now, we've changed the entry exit point. There's the quiet dining room option is not open. Automotive is still open for check-in. Not required necessarily for employees, just for people coming through, students predominantly. And something similar will probably go on in the summer. That may change as well. Other services that we still have available, again, you should expect drop-off pickup to continue to work. And then in general, many of you have asked for access to campus in a variety of ways where you come to campus in an intermediate manner. So a lot of the financial aid and enrollment services teams do come on occasion. They do so now. They come to do things like provide services to students who need forms or access to things that could only access on campus. They come for short periods of time, they leave. And in general, those may be the same kinds of things we do in summer. There is no expectation we would have on-campus services in summer. We are not discussing that at this time. We are not planning for that. There may be slight expansions in key areas as we then know we're getting ready for fall, and that may change. So that's what we plan for summer quarter at this time regarding instruction and services. The only other thing there would be, as we're getting ready for fall, we have one more survey to issue, and that survey is to classified and administrative staff. We did issue a survey to faculty and students, as we've commented on about a month ago. The survey for classified and admin will come out in about 2 weeks, and it will be used to inform our service operations predominantly when we begin in fall. More to come on that in one of our upcoming meetings.
Thank you, Vice President King. Thanks so much. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned last evening, we had faculty who were conferred tenure, and we're very excited to welcome them into that role that they are now fully tenured. And Philip, if you could read the names and talk a little bit about where they are and what disciplines they represent.
Sure, certainly. Again, as we did last night, if you weren't able to be at the board meeting, these are your third-year candidates. So these are for those that are unfamiliar. The ARC process follows through faculty candidates through a 3-year process. When they hit their 8th quarter of 9 quarters, they're presented to the board. Their ARCs do annual work and review, regular work and review, multiple reports. Their 8th quarter report comes in. The board reviews that report, gives feedback, and makes a determination as to whether or not to forward them. These are your 8th quarter or 3rd-year candidates. They were recommended to the board, and board approved tenure for all of these candidates to move forward. They become their tenure track. They become tenured in the fall. The candidates were faculty member Prue Arnquist in the discipline area of nursing with committee chair Anna Sterner, faculty member Leanne DeLuna in the discipline area of nursing with committee chair Betty Cost, faculty member Tishala Ferris in the discipline area of the library with committee chair Elena Esquivel, faculty member Dina Kovarik in the discipline area of biotechnology with committee chair Kira Windstrom, faculty member Zach Mazur in the discipline area of studio arts with committee chair Matthew Allison, faculty member Melanie Meyer in the discipline area of health informatics and information management, or HIM, with the committee chair of Allison Leahy, faculty member Christine Pettish in the discipline area of chemistry with committee chair David Fippen, and finally faculty member Claire Putney in the discipline area of studio arts with the committee chair Alan Yates.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And of course, congratulations. I know if we were all together, we'd be applauding and celebrating this milestone in their professional career. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Next slide, please. I want to give a very brief update about our diversity, equity, and inclusion work right now. Our day of learning is in full gear. We have the diversity, equity, and inclusion learning team has been working very, excuse me. Do you want to talk about, Veronica,
I'll jump in here and skip to the bottom of the slide. So an update on the executive director for diversity, equity, and inclusion recruitment that's currently in process. First round interviews have been completed and an analysis was done of the strengths and weaknesses each candidate brought relative to the qualifications posted for the job. We have identified, I believe, 4 finalists for the second round interviews that will be on or not on campus, in process with campus remotely next week. There will be open forums for each of the candidates. They are going to occur at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on the 24th and 25th of next week. Those are being added to the employee calendar, and there'll be a message and a link sent out to campus before end of day today, hopefully, so that any of you who can join and participate in the open forum process for this position can give their feedback after it's completed. We are still looking at hopefully having a hire by April, May-ish at the latest, and we'll continue to give updates to campus as we have more information. And it looks like Cheryl is still working on.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go to the next slide? Do you need a little more time?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize. This is what happens in real life. So the Day of Learning, as I was mentioning, thanking the DEILT and their excellent job curating the proposals that came in. We have almost 20 proposals, and just very grateful for those who did submit. Excellent opportunities for us to learn together. And our theme is a question: how do we foster inclusive change at Shoreline? So we're going to all come together. We'll have some time, as we would if we were in person, to just gather and have some social conversation. And then we'll have an opening session with setting the tone, and a small keynote from Aisha Hauser, who also will be providing some pre-sessions. The admin team and the classified supervisors have been going through some DEI training. This year, we wanted to open it up to all employees. And so that will happen the first 3 weeks in April when we come back for spring. And those sessions will also be recorded. We're hoping that people will take advantage of that, and it will give us a platform upon which to enter into the Day of Learning. Then later, there will be a breakout session in the morning with reflection time right after all of those. And then we will have lunch. We'll have our service milestones. There will be some music, which we're excited about. And then we will come back with afternoon breakout sessions, reflection, and closing. So that's the frame of the day. People are hard at work to make it interactive and meaningful. And I know we will all enjoy it and continue our deep learning. It's powerful when we can learn together. And I think it makes a big statement that we're taking the time away from other things that are also very important to focus on our learning together. Next slide, please. Thank you, Veronica.
So this one's mine. And again, this is the same information that was presented at the last campus update, and outlines the timeline that we have in place for the presidential search that'll occur across the next year. So what's happening right now is just sort of the kickoff. We're doing research on options in terms of using an internal versus external. I've talked to several of the prior presidential recruitment screening committee members. Those who are still there, I'm reaching out to anyone who has additional feedback they might want to share about what worked last time and what we can improve upon for this time. Once we have all the information in place and are ready to present, which is scheduled for the April Board of Trustees meeting, we will go to them to request certain things like confirmation of what the screening committee should be comprised of, and whether an internal or an external recruiter will be used, and a budget for travel costs for candidates if we're doing in person, although that's a big question at this point. So we'll be looking at kind of all those options about what that budget might be needed for, and what could come up in terms of costs that are supporting a successful recruitment. We are still planning to have the position opened by fall quarter. So there would likely be a nomination process this spring once the board's confirmed how they want us to make that committee up. The work of the committee would start in winter in terms of reviewing applications and interviews, hopefully on campus before the end of that quarter, with a job contract beginning in July for whoever is our new president. Next slide. And I pass it over to Philip.
Yes, please.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everybody. I'm here to update you about a couple of items. If you can go to the next slide. So here's a further iteration of something I mentioned previously. It's plans for instruction in particular. I did mention spring, but I'll read to you the slide. Again, we begin April 5th. Similar to winter quarter, we'll continue to offer asynchronous online for all students. New students who are coming to the US, we want to continue limited hybrid course offerings. That's generally the one hybrid we have on campus. That's not about the Prof Tech piece. So again, remember, we still have Prof Tech on campus, the lab portions, and then in person, or excuse me, the lecture portions predominantly online. And then for students who like to live on campus, a residence hall, remember, still accepting applications. We still have students there all the time. And then for summer, I'd mentioned earlier, similar to spring 2021, we may have a limited number of additional hybrid course offerings. More to come on that as the guidance for fall schedule comes out. Faculty and the deans can look to that guidance, and there may be one, two, multiple options that appear in summer where people want to pilot some of those things. And again, it's all around the fact to remember that we have to ensure safety on campus, distancing, appropriate PPE, sanitation, cleanliness, and air filtration in any classroom. We're going to do it. And then finally for fall, again, we're finishing our guidance, should be done any day, could be today, could be on Monday. And that guidance will be a little bit more specific about the additional offerings. There was a work group that put together a set of tentative recommendations that were included quite a few options, things like hybrid, whereby you have a % of your students in class, a % online, the online portion's asynchronous, and then the in-person portion rotates. There's a version of that in which the students are actually live online while in class, and then a couple of other varieties. So predominantly though, in the fall, you should expect to still see a predominance of asynchronous online. There may be some limited synchronous offerings in combination, but right at this point, any of these synchronous offerings will be done in a way that they have to be recorded, and students have the option of listening to recordings later. And again, then you see this hybrid course offerings with some face-to-face campus instruction. For clarity, more information to come. That's going out to the deans and FPCs now. They'll build fall schedule. We'll have that available. You will not be, again, any more than 25% of our total offerings in person. And then of those, in those 25%, we won't have any more than 25-ish% of the seats taken to ensure distancing is set up correctly. Next slide. So the plans for instruction, what are they based on? I alluded to this earlier, but we did survey students and faculty first, and over 170 faculty completed the survey, over 700 students completed the survey. Those high-level surveys were also sent out to the all faculty listserv. A high level meaning it was about a two to 3 page summary of the broad categories of responses. There were many qualitative comments. We have not finished anonymizing them yet. A lot of times students will declare exactly who their instructor is, and in good or bad, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that we're careful about conveying that information to everybody. So we sent high level. Also, I'm not sure if everybody realizes International Education Team consistently surveys its students. So it actually surveyed both prospective and current students, just about how is it going, current needs, how are things working, as well as future. In general, the feedback is about up to 30% willingness to be on campus and participate in on-campus programs if the college is offering in a safe manner. That includes mask distancing, hand and class sanitizing. And again, let me back up for 1 second. We offered 2 scenarios for people to consider. One was a scenario that indicated to imagine the fall term to be similar to what we experience now, where predominantly PPE and sanitation are required and the distancing is required. The second scenario we offered is one that said the distancing is not required, and that a scenario imagined that we're in a much safer environment where restrictions are being removed. So in general, when I'm giving you this general feedback, it is for the scenario where distancing is still required. So again, 2 scenarios were offered, people responded on both. What I'm presenting as general feedback is related to the scenario where we said we're in a similar mode as today or spring, and distancing is required as we interact with each other and in the classroom. And in that mode, about 30% willingness, and that's on both the faculty side and the student side. And there were variable other categories that people responded, but for clarity, it said, since it said all things being equal, if I have the vaccine, if I feel as though I'm protected, I am willing to participate in an on-campus program of some kind, given these conditions. Students said that and faculty said that. And again, there was a lot of qualitative feedback about likes and dislikes of certain things. And a lot of it from students has to do with very individualized things about particular courses, particular assignments. Again, we're trying to disaggregate that to make sure it's available to everybody. And a combined interest in synchronous online models and hybrid models in a variety of ways. Students are commenting, faculty are commenting about their individual needs, their likes, things that work well and not. I have mentioned this in the past. One of the things that has come up consistently for students is that although not every single class offered in asynchronous is as successful for them as others, the asynchronous online models are offering an opportunity for students to finish in a more timely manner. So a critical piece of feedback we've gotten from a lot of students, not over 100, but quite a few, is that the asynchronous offerings are allowing them to get done on time or quicker because they're not locked to a day and time combination. So that's an interesting outcome. A survey coming. So this last bullet here, survey under construction for admin classified, and we're working on it now. It isn't finished. It'll be routed next to the SL Deans, then through the SESL team. So that's the Students Equity and Success Service team. And a lot of those people are the ones that are leading others that do the service work of the college. Not all, but some. And then we're going to put it in front of students. So before we send the final survey out, we want each of these groups to look at it. Next step, next bullet is we'll send the survey to the college in early April. Open for about 7 to 10 days, get the feedback. We'll review the results with that CESL team and students again, have everybody look at it together, see what they're looking at, and we'll use those results to then look at a set of potential recommendations for in-person supports that I do comment on summer. We don't expect summer to radically change because we're not seeing that indicator yet. It could be a couple of things, but this would predominantly be for fall. And it would be that we might have some in-service supports. Again, if there's willingness, if we're open some, will we need some in-person service for students? How would we manage it? How would we manage it safely? Next slide. We wanted to offer this opportunity to convey to you what we're doing for enrollment. This has come up several times in previous meetings. And so we wanted to share with the campus some of our strategies as we move forward into next year. One of the key things we're working on first, it's often done in larger college settings, predominantly in proprietary or private institutions, but we're starting to practice a model where we set targets. Those usually are done in a particular way where you look at your previous year, you identify what your opportunities are based on that market and or where you are in penetration of that market, i.e. can we increase or have we actually lost that particular market? We've identified that with our traditional high school market, we still actually have room for growth. And of course, we all had a slight downturn because of what we've gone through, but we have room for growth. So we'll have some targeted strategies for traditional high school students, targeted strategies for our adult returning market that cuts across both, remember, our workforce market, but also there's a lot of adult returning students in everyday courses across the board. Prof Tech, traditional transfer. And then we're also going to be setting a particular set of targets around Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and specific strategies that include both outreach, targeted messaging, being intentional about connections to public service agencies. So these are our three broad from a population perspective. There will be more to come on target setting because we're also going to be looking then at programmatic areas that we work on related to specific outreach strategies, again, digital marketing strategies. Next comment would be number 2. As a reminder, we have a new outreach and recruitment team. And again, this is being more intentional around the fact that we're connecting a team together. This was a loosely organized team in the past. So these people that now comprise this team again are Inez Oliva, Russell Dorsey, Suji Schroeder, and again, Amy Stapleton, who's been with the college for a long time, who was already in this role. Some of these people were in these roles already, and similar roles. It's just now one team in a different orientation attached to access and advising. Some of the work they're currently doing. So this is a team recently assembled. Here are their focus areas. They have over 100 virtual events and information sessions scheduled between now, April, and September. Their focus in the next couple months is a focus on how to pay for college, and on the focus on different funding options for all targets, includes an emphasis on intentional financial aid outreach to concentrated in an area of first generation, BIPOC, and our ESL, ELL communities. The next area of focus is career exploration. So we're going to focus on that for people who want to know how to access funding, but not sure what program to start. So really that's on a lot of undecided students, or people who are saying, I'm not sure what I even want to study when we talk to them or when they talk to us. Next area would be expanding our high school outreach outside the school district. And that's partnering with community agencies who serve our youth and strengthening relationships with WASAC or WASAC to support college-bound eligible students. Again, some of you may know we have a particular district. We're in the district. We serve that district. We have certain high schools in that district. We have to be careful when we expand and look at our outside of district. And that's because we work with our partners when we do so. And that would be the other colleges in our area. Last would be conversion strategies. And there's just a lot of work we can do that focus on converting our leads to enrolled students. This really pays attention to traditional university kinds of systems, and it has lots to do with how you do outreach and conversion using particular products. So we actually have a product called Salesforce. It's our customer relation management system. And using that system, not only do we then note who we've contacted and follow up, but we're able to send follow-up messaging to those students to do the very thing we comment here, which is they're considered leads, and we want to convert them to enrolled students. Next slide. So there are 2 grants that are upcoming as well. So people have asked a lot about this, so we want to make sure that the college knows what we're looking for. Our grant area and operation has grown over the last couple of years. That's been led by a variety of individuals, but the individuals in that unit, again, remember, are Dr. Beta Mering, that has been Dr. Lisa Malik, and also Zach Phil, and Dr. Zach Phil, excuse me, I should do that as well. Lisa is in a new area, so Zach is the one who predominantly does this work for us now. One of his primary emphasis is that he goes out to ensure that we understand what's on the horizon, so what's possible for us to apply to. What I have in front of you are 2 grants that we have as options to apply to. The way that federal grants work, a lot of grants work, but predominantly federal, is you hear that they're coming, you know the window of time they open. They open quickly, they don't stay open very long. We have to have been ready the entire time with a prepped proposal to then refine based on what the opening looks like, if there's any nuance, and submit. That upcoming window will be this late March in this month, and they're not open yet. When they open, again, we'll have to be ready. They're both 5-year grants, up to 300,000 and up to 500,000 per year. They do fluctuate. We're hearing the SIP grant was at 450. It may now go down to 400, but we'll see when it actually opens. The first grant mentioned here is a Title III grant, and it's around strengthening institutions program. This program helps eligible institutions become self-sufficient and expand their capacity to serve low-income students by providing funds to improve and strengthen the academic quality, institutional management, and fiscal stability of eligible institution. The college currently is building a grant around things like advising, online and mobile platforms, support for emergency services, co-requisites, predominantly in English, could be in mathematics. It's not listed here, but also in our gateway courses, learning communities and communities of practice. It'll be a cohesive grant that pull those elements together, of which they're managed most likely by a director interfacing with these programs over this 5-year period. And on this particular grant, the goal here is you strengthen the institution, and for sustainability, once the grant is done, you don't necessarily move those positions forward. Those positions go away because whatever you built allows the college to actually sustain itself moving forward without those resources. Our second grant opportunity is something called ANAPISI, and that stands for Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institutions. The ANAPISI program provides grants to eligible institutions of higher education to enable them to improve and expand their capacity to serve Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander students. Current emphasis is learning communities, focused advising, and co-requisite support. The amount is similar. This is a lesser amount on this one. Again, multiple year, most likely a director leading it, connecting and interfacing. This would predominantly be a learning community, connected co-requisite support again, and a lot of retention programming to kind of attract and then hold a set of students. Next slide. And final slide from me is just a sense of kind of where we're focused as it relates to each division. If you don't get mentioned here, it doesn't mean that there isn't a focused intention. These are the ones that are at the high level of where the deans are thinking that are both new or where we've had an emphasis, where we see potential for growth. And again, if you're not mentioned, it doesn't mean we're not working on growth. It just simply means that this is an emphasis area. In the number one area here is simply Business, Communication Studies, Social Sciences Division. That's our BSc division. We recently have at least approval from the board. We have to follow that up with accreditation approval of our Business Intelligence and Data Analytics, our BETA degree. That'll be housed in the business department, but an overlay and connected to multiple other departments, including most likely computer science, but a couple of other areas as well. And again, our honors, the Honors College for us actually has demonstrated continued growth even through the face of the pandemic. So congratulations to that team, but they're looking for continued growth and continued opportunity. We have a very successful Honors College, and they're quite connected to our external community, but interestingly, it's a very diverse set of students in the Honors College here at Shoreline. We want to continue to support growth there. I might make one more note, only simply because we've looked at data recently, in that I don't know if we have to push for growth, but our communication studies area has also demonstrated significant growth. This year, it's been a little flat, as all of us have, but prior to this year, they were demonstrating quite a bit of growth. That has a lot to do with the attraction of the program and the transfer opportunity. Number two is health occupations and nursing. We're looking at potential expansion of our nursing assistant certified program in a non-IBEST version. We just submitted the edited version for our bachelor's in dental hygiene to the state. That's an approval process, so it's in the hands of the state now. The next step is we meet with them in May, where they call us to the state, and it's an oral presentation, a Q&A, and hopefully a final step. If they give their approval, that program would begin in fall of 2022. And then finally, Mary Burrows has been working on a program of LPN to RN conversion. This is something that's across this country. We have a series of individuals who have LPN as their highest level or certificate. And this program pulls the LPNs into our current nursing program, adds additional seats to each cohort, allows those with an LPN to go through a limited amount of curriculum, not the whole program, finish, become an RN, and then graduate, and then they can go into the field as long as they then pass their test as a nurse. Our next area is STEM and workforce. We've had continuous growth. We actually added a faculty member this past year. We see continued interest in our local community and partnerships in biotech. Across the board, we've seen growth in our science programs across the board in all of them. That has a connection to the next bullet I have there on our post-baccalaureate programs, which are gaining notice. And frankly, I have a call with the state next week regarding those programs, but thank you to the team behind that. It's a very affordable program that assists students who have an interest in going to a graduate program. So we bring them to us where they can perhaps pick up additional credits or identify strategies to apply to graduate programs in their field. Predominantly, this is in science. And again, you will also then see coming up soon an area in emphasis in applied computing and coding. And then finally, in our humanities area, We're looking for growth and partnership in our film and drama with some partnerships, and that's something we've been working on, or frankly, Tony Dupay has been working on, and has asked for partnership and support both with Dean Nancy Dick and myself to create partnerships with other entities in our local district, other community colleges. And again, I might mention, if people don't know, our music technology team has done a pretty incredible job on a revamping of their entire curriculum. Is a significant project. It reduced down the amount of credits needed for students to finish their AA. And now Nancy Dick is also finalizing articulation with Olympic College related to that as well. These are, again, just some areas. We're trying to give people some idea of where we're focused. It doesn't mean by not mentioning your program, there is not a focus there. Next slide. I think I'm turning this over to Don Beck.
Yes. So I have the privilege of welcoming Don Beck, our Vice President for Business Administrative Services, and she's going to share a bit about budget and our financial position. Thanks, Don.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Next slide, please. So this is our current cash position. There is $21.6 million in the bank, which is pretty similar to what was there last month. No significant changes. Next slide, please. For the fiscal year 21 budget update, this is the fiscal year that we are in right now. We are about 2/3 of the way through the year, and actual expenses are tracking well to the yearly budget. Taking a look at enrollment, year-to-date enrollment is down 12%. We budgeted for it to be down 10%, so it's 2% lower than budgeted. That 2% decrease in enrollment represents $2.9 million for the whole year, but it's still within reason for the budget for the year. So we're not too concerned about a 2% difference off of what we budgeted. Taking a look at housing, occupancy remains low at 38%. Prior to COVID, we were close to fully occupied, but as soon as COVID hit, it dropped to close to 38%, and has actually been very steady at that level. Within the housing, we're finding more challenges with folks being able to pay their rent, because as the economy continues to be difficult, it's being felt everywhere. And we're working really hard on getting COVID relief funds to all students, and also to tenants who might be having challenges in our housing. The Child Care Center also has reduced enrollment. We, before COVID, we were enrolled with about around 75 kids, and now it's about 1/3 of that. We're working really hard on increasing advertising so that as soon as the county reopens, that our childcare is top of mind, and we're hoping that we can get the enrollment back up in the childcare. Next slide, please. So here is a snapshot of the fiscal year budget and actual. And in the total lines there with revenues and expenditures, you can see that the remaining revenue that we have not collected yet that was budgeted is 34%. That is, if we're 2/3 of the way through the year, there should be about 1/3 remaining, and instead there's 34%. So revenues are like 1% behind budget. But if you look at the total expenditures are also about 1% behind budget. So we're very close to budget, and the revenues and expenditures are tracking well together. Next slide, please. So we have a new budget review process that I want to introduce to you. It's implemented across the entire campus. And what it is a spreadsheet that every budget owner can look at each of their budgets. Now, a budget is, to my way of thinking, it's a prog org. We're not thinking about fund. These are all operating budgets for now. So the prog org is a budget, and we have 180 budgets in the operating account. And there are about 33 people across the campus who are responsible for those 180 budgets. That is a lot of going into FMS and trying to determine how each of the budgets is doing. And FMS is also, it's a little clunky to use. It doesn't give you subtotals, so you can easily see where your spending is compared to budget. So we created a spreadsheet that has subtotals on it and actually shows each department where they are year to date. It also shows where their actual and budget ended up last year and the year before by sub-object. So that means that departments can easily see the trending of the last 3 years and what the spend, or the last 2 years, and what the spending is this year. And what we'll do then is we'll use that trending, that increased level of spending information across the years to then better be able to create a meaningful budget next year. It easily shows us if there's been places where budget and actual have been out of alignment over time, and we can bring those to a more realistic budget for next year. I'm not thinking that it's going to be significant dollar changes, but it's lots of kind of little things where it's a more meaningful budget all the way across. And then also that information can be consolidated. So each ET member will be looking at their team's budgets and having those discussions about if there's proposed budget changes, or if the actuals are not in alignment with budget. It just makes it a lot easier to have those conversations and understand what's going on. And then we'll be able to roll that up in a consolidated way and have conversations about the budget before it's loaded into the system. Gives us a way to see it sooner, which is really nice. Next slide, please. So I want to paint a picture here of the COVID recovery funding that the college is receiving. There's 3 of them now, and by the time I start getting to 3 of them with 3 different names, it gets really hard to track. So what I want to do is just kind of lay it all out here so it's hopefully a little bit more clear. So all 3 funds are called HEERF funds, and HEERF is the reporting that we do on the recovery funds. HEERF stands for Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. And HEERF 1, if you look at the first line, the official name was HEERF 1, and that's the one we're most familiar with. It's the CARES Act. The actual name for the CARES Act is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And within that, the institution of Shoreline received $1.2 million, and the students also received $1.2 million that we received and distributed out to the students. That was the first funding we received. The second one, which was just received fairly recently in December, is HEERF 2. And that one is commonly called CRESA funds. It's the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which is a lot of words. The Shoreline portion of that is $3.4 million. And the student portion on CRESA was, again, $1.2 million. The third one that we just learned about last week is HEERF 3, and its acronym is ARPA, which stands for American Rescue Plan Act. And here's where we were joking that on St. Patrick's Day, we needed to keep pinching ourselves because the amounts keep going up in really surprising, but a relief kind of way. So the institutional portion of ARPA is $4.1 million. We have not received that yet, but we have received an estimate of what our share will be. And the student portion of that is also $4.1 million. The ARPA goes through December of 2023. So it has a much longer spending window on it. So $8.7 million is a lot of money, and it is a tremendous relief because we have at least that much in expenses, either actual expenses we've already incurred or estimated expenses that we're pretty sure are going to come up before we can get fully opened and get the economy back on its wheels and get our enrollment numbers heading back up again. So the planned uses for these 3 pots of CARES funds are the enrollment decreases that we've been talking about is $2.5 million. COVID wages, which includes the cost of translating all of our in-person classes to online, and the hazard pay for staff to come on campus. That's $0.7 million. Housing occupancy, as we discussed in a previous slide, has been down. So we're expecting that by the time we get through the pandemic, the cost of that will be about $2.5 million. And the decrease in enrollment in the child care center, as soon as the pandemic hit, we, for everyone's safety, we had to send all of the children home. We didn't know yet how to socially distance and quarantine and keep our campus safe. And so during that time, our staff was furloughed and being paid, but without any students enrolled. And the cost of that was about $500,000. And then one of the larger costs is the cost of closing the whole campus down for remote operations and then reopening the campus. So we have already spent considerable amounts on computers and equipment to keep employees comfortable while working at home, signage, masks, cleaning supplies, and computers for students. Reopening the campus is also going to be expensive. We need to do some deep cleaning and sanitizing to make sure that we are ready for people to be in the classrooms where we haven't been for a year. We'll need extra signage about cleaning. We'll need to have a good supply of masks and supplies for people who come on campus. And we'll also need better setups so that as we phase back in, if there's any still remaining remote portions of this kind of slow phase back in, there will be costs to that also to make sure that we can function well as a team in different locations. Next slide, please. And that is the budget update. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, thank you to everyone for the updates this afternoon. A couple upcoming meetings to make you aware of. The next Board of Trustees meeting is going to be on Wednesday, April 28th, 4:30 p.m. Regular session, no study session that day, and that's going to be on Zoom. And our next campus update is Friday, May 14th, and that'll be at 11 a.m. Also on Zoom. So we look forward to seeing you for that. And that's going to end the presentation segment of our meeting today. So we do have some questions coming in. If you have questions, go ahead and submit them. And let me switch over here. Like I've done before, I will copy the questions into a Word document so you can read along. We're ready to go here. So the first one's a comment we'll start out with. At the meeting with classified staff last month, Dr. Roberts professed shock that the staff were scared to share their true feelings at meetings for fear of retaliation. I cannot believe that Dr. Roberts really did not know that the staff are worried about retaliation. If she truly did not know, then I still have grave concern about her leadership, as I think that she must care very little for the employees of Shoreline Community College. This implies to me that she does not see the fear and anxiety felt by every employee.
So I'd like to address that. I think during the meeting, I, myself, executive team, but particularly myself, we have been working with the classified union when we hear things like being expressed, and also when I was at the meeting, that we had not made the headway, and that there was still this feeling. And I know a lot of it was around loss of jobs and reduction in force, and that created a lot of anxiety and fear. Understandably. And I thought with working with them, we had made greater strides in that area. And I was very disappointed that we had not. During the meeting, I said that we needed an intervention. And I then met with the classified union, and we talked about what that might look like. And we are working on that right now. They've identified some classified employees that will be working with Aisha Hauser to come up with some strategies for us to really address it in a deeper way. We thought we were making movement, and it is not sizable enough and it's not dramatic enough to quell the ongoing feeling of fear. And I heard them, and I want you to know that I did know that that was being felt by many employees, not all employees, but many employees. We were working with the classified union, as I said, to address some of them, and it has not made a dramatic enough impact. And we want to be able to do that. And I think going forward with this new conversation, I think we'll be able to address more of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question. The most recent coming and goings report showed 6 critical separations from the college, such as Jennifer Fenske. The staff do need to know who to contact when these staff leave the college in their absence, but most staff are never given this information. Who should we contact? Will we get this information?
So in many cases, the direct supervisor will be contacting those in their division when people leave. But we also have the comings and goings that comes out through HR. I'm not sure if Veronica would like to speak to that at all, or Dawn, but we do publish that fairly regular basis.
Yeah, and just to echo what Cheryl said, it's typically going to be the area that puts it out. It might be on an out of office from the person who left. I'm no longer with the college, but you may contact so-and-so for any questions you would have directed to me. Sometimes there's something put out to a particular area or division that they work closely with, and it really is going to be depending on who's the backfill or who can help out for the work that was assigned to that person while the job is recruited or whatever change is going to happen. Specific to Jennifer Fenske, Dawn, do you want to say who they should be contacting in the interim?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have that here in front of me, but she does have an out of office on her email, and it lists the different types of tasks and who will be doing them in her absence. And if you get stuck and you have any questions, you can always contact me or send me a note, and I can help get you the resources of who you would need to talk to.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you. The next question. Can you tell us why students still need to come into automotive to get their sticker? Besides logging in, how is this helpful?
So we still have to do the attestation piece or the access piece. And part of it is ensuring that they've done that and that's what the sticker is about. So we couldn't, I'm going to ask Gavin to also come on as well, because we ruminated over this quite a bit, trying to figure and labored over this quite a bit, how best to do this without creating an impediment or a barrier to faculty to do that. So we came up with the idea of still having the attestation stations in the automotive building for those who are mostly in the north end of campus, and making sure that everyone had a sticker that would identify that they actually identified they had no symptoms coming on campus that day. Gavin, do you want to share any more, or did I answer it?
You pretty much answered it. Part of what happens when people walk up to that station is the person looks them up to see that they checked in for the day. And if they don't see them in that list, they say, oh, did you, maybe forget to check in? Can you do that now?
Thank you. And that, again, we still have to do that. It's part of our ability to have people on campus. The governor is very clear that we have to have people entering some kind of a form when they come on campus. And so this, again, alleviates any kind of pressure on the faculty to have to do that. And so we've taken it on by having the student check in, making sure that they've done that attestation. Thank you.
Thank you. In yesterday's Board of Trustees meeting, Dr. D'Ambrosio congratulated the tenured faculty and then went on to yet again state how the faculty are liars, as evident from the vote of no confidence report. Does the board support faculty or not? Does President Roberts support faculty in reality?
Well, I would commend you to the board chair D'Ambrosio's report and letter that she wrote to the campus. She and the board had some concerns about the accuracies of parts of that report. And that's really what they talked about. Also in that statement, she did share that she has confidence in all of us at the college and the work that we do. And the board shared that as well. I have confidence in the faculty. I have confidence in all of our employees. As I mentioned, I am very grateful for all the work that you do. We may disagree about things, but that doesn't mean that I don't support the faculty or any of our employees. We need each other, and we need to lean on each other, particularly during this stressful time as we move through COVID, through reopening, and going forward.
Yes, thank you. Next question asks, what is the update on the Director of Enrollment Services and Financial Aid position?
Philip, Vice President King, would you mind giving an update, please?
We're right now in the middle of finalizing. Offers were made. We looked at some finalists. We're trying to finalize an offer that was made. We haven't, but that process is not finished, but it should be soon.
Thank you. Next question. What is the update on Multicultural Center, Gender Equity Center new offices?
So I know that there have been some discussions, but I have not privy on the most recent discussions about these offices. Dawn, I know that you and Pete have had conversations.
Yeah, I think we are still working on the design. It's really challenging when we're all remote, because really the easiest way to remodel a space is to have everyone walk through it and envision where the different doors and desks and everything are. So it's really been challenging being remote. There are also some challenges in the space. The sloped floor, which I think we can work around. One of the things I know that Pete was working on is the building code says that you cannot have more than 2 doors to get to an exit. That's a fire code. You don't want to have to go through more than 2 doorways in an emergency. And so some of the initial designs, I think, had folks 3 doorways back. So it is in process. It is unfortunately slower than we would like because we're still in COVID, but there is progress being made.
I would say there's progress being made on the all gender restroom on the second floor as well. It just connected with all of this, the changes that we'd like to make in the club.
Thank you. Next question. Did we use the word synchronous or asynchronous in our survey about student preferences? Or did we use the layman's definition for those terms? Or did we provide clarity what that means when we asked that question?
Vice President King.
I believe we did. I don't have the survey in front of me directly. I'm sure that one of the conversations we've had is about the word asynchronous. It throws students off, people off in general. They don't know what it means. So I believe we spelled that out very succinctly when we sent it. I can't confirm that. I'd have to look at the survey, and we can send that out in clarifying notes when we respond to the question. So I'll have a direct response. We used the word and we defined it from Mariah texting me in this moment. Thank you, Mariah.
All right, gotta love real-time answers. I certainly appreciate those. The next question. Most of my students cannot afford tuition, supplies, etc., sometimes even with FAFSA if they qualify. Do you have a list of where I should refer them?
So I know there is now a one-stop page on the website, and Philip, if you want to talk about that, or Martha.
Yeah, I mean, that's predominantly it's our team that's actually helping respond to the from the emergency aid, you might say, perspective. And there's a website, there's a form stack process that students can submit continuously. So it looks like it's done every quarter, but it's actually done continuously. It's reviewed continuously by a team of people who vet and respond in a very timely manner to try to reach out and support students with additional dollars. The max cap right now on, in general, the max cap on additional aid to students is $2,115, but we've gone above that. And then it does provide for the very things that people are commenting here. I think we'll ensure that we have the link and a little more detail when we respond to this question when we send out responses after the meeting.
Can just throw out there too that you can find all the funding options at shoreline.edu/funding. So if you're just looking for a quick link where everything can be found, so emergency funding is part of that. And then there is also a COVID pandemic assistance fund page that's separate.
Thank you, sweetheart.
And that is, you can find that at shoreline.edu/COVID fund. But we'll also send those out to everybody.
Moving on to our next question. If we are setting targets around recruiting BIPOC populations, what strategies are we doing about retention of these populations? I have had a few students of color say they don't feel like they belong at Shoreline because there are not many faculty or staff of color that understand their experience and experiences are not being validated by the faculty.
Excuse me, we had a conversation about this at noon and about bringing in students and retaining them and making sure that they feel like they belong, not just welcomed, but who they are is welcomed. I mean, well, who they are is honored and respected. So Philip, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know you were talking about ambassadors and some things like that to help and connecting up some of the other support services to ensure not just getting new people here, but also supporting them while they're here.
Sure, I can actually, so they have the outreach and recruitment team, thank you Inez Oliva, and connected to Martha's team, communication marketing, working on a set of action plans. The strategies include the following for the upcoming quarters: partnering with HopeLink, the community organizations, to host virtual events for their BIPOC clients, connecting with an organization called Black Coffee to engage their networking future leaders events, utilizing Amharic and Arabic speaking work study students for community outreach, taking part in Washington Student Achievement Council financial aid events, and especially in other languages and service areas related to Mandarin, Somali, and Spanish, utilizing services of Refugee and Immigrant Services Northwest in translation of our materials, continuing partnerships with King County Library for financial aid workshops, literacy events, engaging in outreach, and highlighted specific areas of student interest programmatically. And we mentioned this earlier around things like STEM, the Honors College, athletics, or HBCU pathways. Continuing to collect, disaggregate, and analyze data to better understand and evaluate student patterns to inform marketing, messaging, and outreach tactics. Hone messaging around the support and services historically underrepresented students can expect from Shoreline. Paid digital advertising and direct mail geared toward local communities of color and speakers of other languages. So, social media outreach to groups and organizations relevant to local families of color. Increased focus on storytelling that features underrepresented voices, especially in our blog, social media, media stories. And finally, continued progress in relevant website projects that might highlight specialized and equity-focused stories and strategies related to our DEI populations. Those are in general the action strategies from the team. Two other things I'd mention that we're trying to be more intentional about is, again, a continued review of both our own disaggregated data. How do we understand who we are as an employee, a set of employees? Who are we as a district? What are the representations in our district? What are the representations of employees? What are the representations of our students? Being thoughtful about that in the recruitment of our students, being thoughtful about that as the recruitment of our staff and employees as well. And then finally, what I'd say is I just gave you a super long list, and we're really good at long lists, and not maybe any of us, because we're busy, of completing long lists. So a very targeted, focused thing we're going to do is focus on a subset of these strategies, which predominantly are on marketing communication. These are outreach strategies, connection to local communities that are going to work on BIPOC, and then FAFSA outreach, which cuts across and supports all students. So that's from a new recruitment internally. Remember, we also have to continue our students. So there'll be a redoubled effort on, and you'll hear more about this soon, on retention programming. And most likely for the short term, that is us working together better on broad sets of retention strategies, having key people identified to support students to retain them, which include then learning communities attached to our BIPOC and other populations, and a peer mentor, development of a student peer mentor group. So those key things, we're going to try to stay focused on them for this next 6 months for next year. Long answer. Sorry for the long answer.
Thank you, Philip. The next question asks, will there be an incentive for employees working on campus?
We currently do have an incentive. I thank you, Veronica.
So it's not an incentive, but just to be clear, it's money recognizing that those who are being required to come on campus for essential duties are exposing themselves to risk besides those who get to stay from home and not come to campus at all. If it is truly a question about whether we're going to incentivize returning to campus, I don't believe we have any plans. But again, we are looking at the risk factor, and for those that are required to be here, providing a compensation for that group of people.
Thank you for fine-tuning that word incentive. I appreciate that.
Thank you. If not today, then at the next meeting, could we see a slide of the map of the district for Shoreline Community College? Visual is awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, I have that to share. So let's take a look at our district. And thanks to Martha for passing along a link. I'll also put that in the answered questions. But this map shows what our district is.
It's the entire cities of Shoreline and Lake Forest Park, about 20 square miles.
I particularly appreciate the offshore recruiting we get to do. Which looks like about a quarter to a third of our area.
I know. That's where the dolphins are. So we have the smallest district in the state.
So it's nice to see that, and I agree. Visual, you could say between a certain point and a certain point, but visual really makes the difference.
Thank you for that, Randy.
Glad we could
Thank
add
you for the
that.
question. For all the questions, actually. Thank you.
And the next question, can you share more about the applied computing and programming? This is exciting.
Thank you, Philip.
You know, there's a couple of us involved, and I might tap into, I'm not an expert in this at all. I'd say a couple of things, and then if Gavin wants to come on board, Gavin's certainly supported. If Crystal Hess is anywhere back there and we can elevate her, I don't think we can, but we could, Gavin. Here's what I'd say about this, and I've seen this at other colleges. Traditional computer science programs are sometimes a little bit old, and so they teach in very, very traditional manners and in a particular way that aren't necessarily relevant to the field anymore. And I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but this is something different. And applied computing really speaks to coding and software development. And it's a little more nuanced. It's not a traditional degree. And so we're working on it right now. We're working on the name because we weren't sure about the name. We're working on the exact language of the job duties. We're working on trying to figure out where the market, where we would market this to attract people. And then the last thing I'd say, and if Gavin wants to comment too, the state right now is in the midst of passing several pieces of legislation. One of the pieces of legislation is, I think simply, well, it's nicknamed the Amazon Bill. And in it is a push that every single community college in the state would be eligible to develop a bachelor's of computer science. And it's extracted out of UW. UW's pushing this because we don't get enough people in the field. This is the college's approach. Our approach is we want to take us to look at in this particular area. And with that, I probably have spoken more than I should about something I don't know a lot about. And I don't know if Gavin would want to offer anything.
You know, this is really the from the department, and my only role in it is to be excited about it because it sort of matches what I've done in my own career in terms of using computers to solve organizational problems as opposed to, you know, sort of doing the theory work or writing compilers or word processors that you do with the computer science degree. And I think there's a lot of demand for people who can work in that field, including in the new beta position and things like that. So I just think it's exciting.
Yeah, and that would be the last thing I guess I'd say. And you know, more to come on this. You should see most likely a position being announced soon for this area. That's one of our goals. But this position is as a faculty position combined with the recently approved business admin position would be the two key positions that could support our beta degree. So our beta program is one that's really going to be a combined discipline. So this position allows us to support that program, but it also would support in our other areas, including music technology and VCT. So this particular emphasis for us is strong. I think there's some growth. It cuts across program areas. We do see the demand out in the field. And it does actually, in particular, pay attention to what we're learning about how young students are learning at a very basic something like coding. Which is becoming, it's like learning a foreign language, and students learn it at a very early age these days. So we're really trying to pay attention to that. More to come on that. You should see more information coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Philip and Gavin. In yesterday's board meeting, one of the trustees asked Vice President Beck what the current financial state of the college is. She did not answer this question, but rather said she couldn't predict the future. What is the current financial state?
Well, let me start. I think I did step in the board meeting. I remember this question, and I did answer it by saying that we've spent a lot of time getting our expenses and our revenue into alignment and balance. So we are in a good position to be able to weather any vagaries that might happen because of loss of enrollment or things at the state. So with that, I'll let Don talk more, and of course our reserves.
Yeah, and we did speak on it at length. The way I remember the question is that he asked, how are we doing for the future? And the future we don't know, but we did do a large portion of the presentation on how we're doing today, and that we have a budget and we are meeting our budget, and we are looking to the future, trying to make sure that we position the college for future stability. Remembering that what we talked about is over a few years of enrollment decreases. We didn't make any changes to our staffing, and we supported staff by using our cash reserves. Nobody anticipated that following on the economic downturn that we had 10 years ago, we would then have a pandemic. Two things within 20 years is pretty rare to have significant setbacks that quickly together. So at this point, what we are focusing on is we are well positioned in the current economy for financial stability moving forward. And we want to make sure to include into future budgets some return of cash reserves, so that if we do encounter another economic downturn, that we are positioned to weather that. Thank you.
Thank you. And you may want to stay on, Vice President Beck. And next question also ask about your budgeting tool. Recognizing that Vice President Beck's budgeting tool is an organizational method, I am concerned that this will end in the cutting of allocation of resources to departments that have already virtually no resources. Very little funding, very little staff. How will departments advocate for the resources needed if this tool will make the decision for ET?
Oh gosh, thank you. That's a good question. The tool doesn't actually make decisions. The tool actually provides information so that we can make better decisions. One of my favorite things to say is I don't have any intention of becoming a CF no. Someone who always says no and is always about cutting the budgets. I want to make sure that everyone in the campus has the financial resources that they need that is available within our allocation and our revenue models, enrollment models. I want to make sure that every campus has what they need to function and to provide the services that are essential that they need to provide for the college. So what this does is it actually gives us better information because we can see what the actual spending has been over the last 3 years. And the theory being that if these funds have actually been being spent and the college has been operating, that is what it takes to run that department. And it also allows departments to go in and we'll be able to see what the details of their spending are so that they can then predict what it will be for next year. Because sometimes there are regular recurring expenses that we know about, and those are easy to budget for. But sometimes there is an expense that only comes along every couple of years, and it causes a big spike in expenses. And just looking at a static number, it's really hard to remember what that is. So I'm trying to provide a little bit more in-depth information so that we can make smarter choices to provide departments with the resources that they need to run their departments. And the intention is never to use the tool as a cutting tool. That's just, that I would not like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we have come to the end of our time here, and I want to give time for any closing statements or any reminders of upcoming activities. We have a lot coming up here in the next month and a half.
Thank you again, Randy. Just being mindful that we're going to move into finals week coming up, and that's always a stressful time and also a joyful time too, to bring another quarter to an end. As we move into spring break, for those who will be taking that time, just be aware of being safe as you go into that. We all want to keep us moving forward toward reopening more fully in 21, 22. And it takes all of us acting responsibly as we have been. I've been very impressed by how all of us have comported ourselves in our personal lives so that we can continue to have very few cases, no cases in our residence hall, no cases currently on our campus for the last several months, and it's all tribute to all of you and taking care. Is there anything else that we want to share as this is again our last communication before April from the executive team members? No, I think we're going to have a minute early.
All right.
Oh,
Very good.
I should just say that Randy does a wonderful job. He will collect all the questions that have not been answered. And then we will definitely do that, and our commitment has been to get that information out within 1 week.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon and a good weekend, everyone.